Welcome once again to Against the Spread, where we endeavor to pick NFL games for you against the spread. We've done a good job so far, so we'll try to keep that rolling. The Dolphins have done like a relatively good job so far, but they're switching things up, and Tua will be their new starting quarterback, Lowe. That's not really going to impact our picks this week, but it is notable. Your initial thoughts are what?
Yeah, I mean, I first saw it, I was pretty surprised because Fitzpatrick had been doing fairly well. He got the team out to a big lead over the Jets, and they got a big win. And he struggled a bit, but that's kind of what you get with Fitzpatrick. You get the good and the bad, and they find themselves above the Patriots in the AFC standings for the first time since 2008. And you'd think that would be enough to make them want to push for a playoff spot rather than to the unknown. But after I got over the shock of seeing that, I thought they must love Tua. They must love what he's doing for them off the field and want to get him in as soon as possible. That's the only thing that makes sense when it comes to their position and how Fitzpatrick was playing.
Yeah, I think, it was working out perfectly for them where Tua could have this gap year and just learn and absorb, and they were still somewhat competitive, and there's no pressure to win right now. And I almost feel like they watched the Bills on Monday night. They've watched the Patriots on Sunday, both of them offensively looking challenged, I think is like the nicest way
Yeah.
to say that. And they said, like, I mean, why can't we win this division? And maybe Tua gives them a bit of a higher ceiling than someone like Ryan Fitzpatrick does. When you look at the level of rookie quarterback play in the league between Herbert and Burrow, and if we were having this conversation 2 years ago, we would have thought Tua by far was the better player of that group. So I think maybe that's the reasoning, but who knows? It'll be fun to watch, and it will also be fun to see what that does to Dolphins lines moving forward. What that does, for people who put bets on where the Dolphins would rank in that division and what their over-under would be in terms of wins. So intrigue is always good. But I think it speaks to how bad the East is in the AFC. One thing that we don't need a quarterback change to tell us, the East is very bad in the NFC, and that's where we'll start this week with the Thursday nighter. And I'm not sure if the football is going to get better with a short week of rest, but we'll see. The Giants go to Philadelphia. Philly at home are 4-point favorites. Where are you leaning?
This is an interesting one for sure. I mean, I don't think the football can get worse, especially from a Giants standpoint. But as injured as the Eagles are right now, and they're offensively, it's more injured than I've seen a team maybe ever. They ended that game on Sunday against the Ravens with two projected starters from the offseason starting 11. So it's really bad. And they're coming up against a New York defense that might be a bit better than they get credit for. But the Eagles have faced the top two defenses in the league in the last 2 weeks and have been able to put up points. They've combined for 57. So I think Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz and that offense are going to find a way to manufacture some points on Thursday night. And I can't say the same about the Giants offense, which is ranked 31st. I just don't trust they can score. So I'm going to take the Eagles at home by 4. I like them to win this game regardless of those injuries.
Yeah, this line started at 6.5, and I'd feel much more comfortable at that number. I still actually feel comfortable at 4 to go with the underdog Giants. And you mentioned the Eagles and their ability to score. I'm just looking at who's not going to be available, and I'm wondering who is going to score. You mentioned the injuries. Miles Sanders will not be playing. He's got a knee injury. Zach Ertz with the high ankle sprain. He's had a down year, but he's still someone who demands a double team in the middle of the field. And the other, surplus of great tight ends that they have in Dallas Goedert is still on IR. So I struggle to see how they're going to have enough difference makers to make this, a 5-point or more win for Philly. And I think it's going to be a field goal game, and so I'll take the points with the Giants. But I feel great about it because, like, this game could end in a tie, and it could be 0-0.
Oh,
I suppose I would win.
Not another tie. I don't care what happens. I just don't want another tie. Please.
Well, I think this next division is going to be fought to the end, so a tie would really throw a wrench in things, and that's the surprising and frisky Carolina Panthers, who rallied without Christian McCaffrey and are at 500 against the New Orleans Saints, who are at 3-2 at home. 7.5 points is what the Saints are favored by at home, even though there isn't a huge discrepancy in the win column. There is a huge discrepancy in our expectations on these teams. Is that too many points for the Saints?
Well, that's where I feel that this spread comes from, because like you alluded to, I don't think we've seen much from the Saints to tell us that they should be favored by more than a touchdown in this game. I feel like the Saints are a 10 or 11 win team, but none of those wins are going to come easily. Drew Brees can't throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field. The defense is a lot worse than we initially expected they were going to be, or at least they're playing that way. But they know how to win football games. So I think in division, it'll be a tough matchup. It'll probably be closer than 7.5. So I'll take the Panthers, but I think the Saints ultimately pulled this one out.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go the other way on this one as well. And I do think the Saints can cover this amount of points. And, let's just look at how they're trending in terms of they expected to get Michael Thomas back. They didn't get him back. They pull out a tough win. Drew Brees with his 37th win coming back or trailing in the fourth quarter. Then they go on the bye. So they go into the bye feeling good, and they get their big offensive weapon back, healthy once again in Thomas. And so I think they're due for a game where they really break out and explode offensively. And so I'll ride with the 7.5 points and cross my fingers and hope that they can cover it. Cleveland and Cincy. A couple times this year, I feel like every week since week one, I've said, you know what? Out of the two quarterbacks in this game, I actually trust the rookie more. And every time I've been talking about Joe Burrow, and this is the case in this game as well. Now, that hasn't led to the Bengals being very successful in the win column, but they have been good against the spread, 4-2 against the spread. They're 3-point underdogs at home against the Cleveland Browns. Are you leaning with Cleveland here, or do you think the home dog has some value?
It's definitely a good point about quarterback. I think I probably trust Joe Burrow more than Baker Mayfield now as well, especially because he's dealing with what I think are rib injuries, and that's just so tough for a quarterback. That being said, the Bengals haven't shown us that they can win games. They've on multiple occasions blown games they should have won, including a 21-0 lead this past weekend. And I think the fact that Mayfield is injured plays a part. And if this spread was bigger, I'd consider taking the Bengals here. But the Browns still have a dominant offensive line. They still have a dominant run game. And this is still a team that if we were picking this game last week, neither of us would have batted an eye at this spread. So I'm not going to worry too much about them being beaten down by Pittsburgh, who is, I think, the best team in the NFL right now. I think the Browns are going to bounce back, and they're going to get a win here. And I have no problem taking 3.
See, I'm going the other way on this one as well, because I don't need the Bengals to necessarily win the game. I just need them to keep it close and to cover. And remember Sam Darnold, I think it was on a Monday nighter a couple years ago, said that he was seeing ghosts. It's kind of the way I feel about Baker Mayfield right now. Yes, he had a great game 2 weeks ago, so that would have changed the way we look at this game. But he was playing the worst defense in the league in the Dallas Cowboys. So he did struggle against maybe arguably the best defense in Pittsburgh. So he's probably right in the middle, but he's making some odd decisions. And so again, I trust Burrow more, and I'm actually going to trust and take the value in the points with the Bengals, as 3-point dogs. You mentioned the fact that we could really change the way we view teams and how it could change the line. I think that's the case for this next game. The Packers, only 3.5-point favorites going to Houston in the Houston Texans. That's pretty close considering the records of these teams, 4-1 and 1-5. Where are you leaning?
Yeah, that's an interesting point about thinking about what happened last week. I bet you that LaFleur and Rodgers and the rest of the Packers are doing their best to forget what happened on Sunday. And I think that's going to be my approach in this game too, because we've got two totally different opponents for the Packers here. They're coming off a game against one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. And on the flip side, you've got the Texans who are one of the bottom defenses in the NFL, and they are the worst team against the run. So I think Green Bay has a nice bounce back against a defense like that. I think it's definitely possible that Deshaun Watson gives them some trouble, but I don't think they're going to have problems scoring points. I think we're going to see a lot of Aaron Jones, probably a lot more of Jamal Williams than we're used to seeing. And I think the Packers go on the road and get a statement win after being embarrassed on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not going to let the recency bias cloud my view of this game as well. Again, if we were talking 2 weeks ago, the Packers would have been heavily favored. The Texans were coming off getting rid of their coach. Romeo Crennel's defense has not looked any better now that he's wearing the headset that says HC head coach on the side of it and not just DC. So I think, Rodgers in a bounce back opportunity is big. To me, this one is the game of the week in styles and like fights, and this is going to be a heavyweight contest. Pittsburgh going to Tennessee. And even though they're on the road, the Steelers are favored by 1.5 points. Two teams who are 5-0. This is the latest they've been 5-0 in a long time in each franchise. This is a big one, and maybe a little too early to say, AFC Championship preview. Our Chiefs fans will be upset, but certainly potentially a playoff preview. These teams have looked good so far. Where are you leaning?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's definitely the most fascinating matchup of the season so far. That Steelers #1 defense against a Titans offense that is now, playing like one of the best in the NFL. And as dominant as the Titans looked on offense this past weekend, I got to go with the Steelers and that defense. They're just like the Bucs. I think they're just as dominant. They have more sacks than anybody in the league. They have more QB pressures than anybody in the league, and they blitz more than anybody in the league. And I think now that the Titans don't have their starting left tackle in Taylor Lewan, which I think is a huge injury, I think Tannehill could really struggle in this game. I mean, I think they'll play well, but I think the Steelers will give him problems. And when it comes to Derrick Henry, the Steelers defense is also the #2 ranked rush defense in the NFL. So it's by far the stiffest test he's faced so far this season. And the Steelers have scored 38 points in each of the last 2 games. So the Steelers, I think they're the best team in the NFL. I like the Titans, but given how small that spread is, I'm taking the Steelers here.
Yeah, and for me as well, it's all about the defense. Top defense in the league, top scoring defense in the league, and total defense in the league. And yes, Tennessee's rushing attack is crazy. If you had Derrick Henry in fantasy, you won this week, no matter who you were playing or who else was on your roster. But again, Pittsburgh has the ability to stop the run on the way to the quarterback. You mentioned it. They bring a lot of blitz pressure, and it's tough to have a hat on a hat defensively when you're blocking up in a zone run scheme like Tennessee has. How do I know? Because I saw the Cleveland Browns, who were gashing the entire league against the run, really struggle on offense against Pittsburgh in their pressure package. So I think in a very similar way, Pittsburgh has a big day defensively, and they're able to win this one. I'm not sure how great the defense is going to be in this next matchup. The Detroit Lions are going to the Atlanta Falcons. I'll give you the Falcons defense knows how to turn the ball over, and maybe that's why they're 2.5 point favorites at home. Who do you like in this matchup?
Nobody. I'm calling this my distrust game of the week because I have no faith that either of these teams will do anything that I expect them to do. The Falcons are coming off a huge win over the Vikings, but I'm not going to put all that much stock in a terrible Kirk Cousins game, which is exactly what that was. And the Lions are probably the only other team that have blown more double-digit leads than the Falcons have. So who do you take in this game? I really don't know. I'm going to reluctantly take Detroit. I think maybe my distrust is a little bit less than it is for the Falcons, who really, aside from that win on Sunday, have looked wretched. So give me the Lions, but really don't bet on this game is my actual advice.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with the Falcons, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but my methodology going for the Falcons is going to be the exact same as it was a week ago when they're taking on another bad NFC North team, the Minnesota Vikings. And although both teams' records are bad and we don't trust either of them, and we have real questions about some of the coaching decisions on both sides of the ball, Atlanta has actually put together some very good football. Their offense has had stretches where they're dominant. The Matt Ryan, Julio Jones connection is there once again. The difference is they haven't been able to figure out how to finish those games off and win them. Well, we saw them do that against the Minnesota Vikings, and I think against a not very good opponent like the Detroit Lions, they'll be able to do that as well. And so 2.5 points, I do think the Falcons can cover that. I don't think they're necessarily as bad as they seemed to start the year, and so I like the Falcons in this one. The Buffalo Bills offensively, I don't think are as bad as they were against the Chiefs. A big spot, primetime game for a relatively young team and a young starting quarterback, and in the rain, which didn't help Josh Allen whatsoever. But are we giving them maybe too much respect? 13 points. They are favored on the road against the Jets. So where are you leaning with this big spread?
Yeah, you mentioned the offense, and I think the Bills' defense is a big problem too. They're not nearly as good as what we've come to expect, and they were torn apart by Clyde Edwards-Helaire on Monday night. And I think some questions need to start being asked about whether this Bills team can compete with the best of the best, because they've come up against two of those teams in the last 2 weeks and they haven't fared well. That being said, they're now playing the worst of the worst, and this Jets team is one of the worst teams I've ever seen. And as I was watching Bucs Packers, I was also watching Jets Dolphins out of the corner of my eye on Sunday, and it was not worth it. I should have shut it off. And that's why I'm going to take the Bills by 13. I can't think of one reason that I would ever take this Jets team. I don't have one. And if you can give me one, I'm all ears, but I don't have it.
I got nothing for you, unless we have information that Adam Gase is going to Spygate and filming other teams' practices. But even still, I don't know.
Would that work? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think so. Because I mean, like as much as the Bills maybe are not yet ready for prime time and aren't in that elite conversation despite the fast start, and maybe it's too early to crown them like the heir to the AFC East because the Patriots have struggled. Well, just look at these rosters. What part of the Jets football team is in any way better or even close to the Bills? A quarterback, no disrespect to Joe Flacco, no. I mean, the backfield, probably not. Like, maybe that's the closest part because Singletary and Moss have been a bit disappointing. The offensive line, certainly not. The defensive secondary, certainly not. So, I coaching, no. So yes, I do think this in a very similar fashion to the way the Miami Dolphins, a team who's been up and down, the San Francisco 49ers, a team who's been up and down, both beat the brakes off the New York Jets. I think the Buffalo Bills can do the exact same thing. And so I'm going to lean on them to cover 13.
Yeah.
This line, it's actually changed already, which is quite fast considering the Cowboys, played in the late Monday night. I have to specify because there were two of them. The Cowboys are now favored by 1 on the road in Washington. The line came out and they were originally favored by 3, and already it's 1. Maybe that is a bit of the Andy Dalton factor, as he didn't look nearly like a facsimile of Dak Prescott in that Cowboys offense. In what is virtually a pick-em in a line this close, where are you leaning? At Dallas versus Washington?
I mean, I watched a lot of bad football this weekend. There was a lot of good, don't get me wrong, but there was also a lot of bad football. And the worst thing I saw was that Cowboys offensive performance. They just had nothing. Given everything that they've got, all the weapons they've got, the play calling was terrible. Andy Dalton was worse than the play calling. And the turnovers were just killers. And it was the worst thing I saw. And during that game, there were multiple times where I caught myself saying to myself, I will not pick the Cowboys again. That being said, I am picking the Cowboys in this game. And as unimaginable as it is, everything that I just described, Washington's offense is actually worse than Dallas's offense with Andy Dalton at the helm. They're dead last in rushing. They're 28th in passing, 30th in points for, and 31st in total yards. And they haven't scored more than 20 points since week 1. And so I'm going to take Dallas. I'm going to take Dallas regardless of what I said to myself last night, just because Washington is so inept on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm not going to. And I almost got there too, and I almost was talked into it. I was steadfast. I'm going to pick against Dallas, even though when you look at the schedule, this might be one of the few games that they probably should win.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no. But then the line changes. I'm like, oh, it's 1 point. You got to take Dallas. Nope, not going to do it.
Good for
Washington
you.
has an elite pass rush. That's the one thing they do at a high level. Dallas doesn't do
Yeah.
anything at a high level, and certainly they can't protect the passer. And Andy Dalton showed you that there's a grave difference in his mobility than that of Dak Prescott.
Everything
sure,
about him.
Yeah, true. That as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure a player has ever suffered a gruesome injury and then in like a week has had more contract leverage before than is the case than with Dak Prescott. And it's because you just saw the stark contrast of what that offense looked like without him. And so if I'm wrong and the playmakers on the outside can overcome the fact that their offensive line is a shambles and Andy Dalton really struggled and their defense can't stop anybody, then so be it. But I will not once again fall prey to the 0-6 against the spread Dallas Cowboys.
Oh yeah, wow. All right, well, you almost convinced me to switch, but I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it there just because. Also, you didn't mention how bad their coaching has been as one of those many terrible things you listed off. But I'm gonna stick with it. This is the time Dallas gets that win against the spread. I'm telling you.
Well, bad coaching is not something you can say about the AFC West the way you can about the NFC East because Ron Rivera had some unfortunate, let's say, coaching moments as well last Sunday. But Seattle coming off a bye, 3.5-point favorites against Arizona, who looked really good on Monday night. Granted, they were playing the Cowboys.
Right.
Where are you leaning in this one?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing is if you look at the final score of that game and the box score, you definitely think that the Cardinals offense especially really had a dominant game, but I didn't feel that way watching the game. I think outside of a couple big plays from Kenyon Drake and Christian Kirk and some really insane plays from Kyler Murray using his legs that we just become accustomed to. The guy is a physical freak. There really wasn't all that much that I loved about what the Cardinals did on offense. They just took advantage of some really bad Dallas turnovers and won a game they should have won. What I do trust in this game is the Seahawks offense. Russell Wilson is playing some of the best football of his career, and they've just got a week off. I expect them to come into this game and be clicking on all cylinders. It's a division game. These NFC West games can be tough to predict, and the Seahawks play in one-score games. That's what they're known for. But I'm going to bet this one-score game is a touchdown and not a field goal. So I'm going to take the Seahawks as the favorites.
Yeah, this is gonna be a fun game to watch. Certainly, one of the 4:00 games, and hopefully you've stocking your fantasy lineup with guys from this game because I do think the over opened at 55. It's now 56. I think it's going to go over. It's going to be a lot of points, and I'm actually looking forward to watching two quarterbacks who are shorter than me sling the ball all over the place. But I am going to go with the quarterback who's in the MVP conversation, and that's Russell Wilson. I love the fact that they've got some extra rest baked into this game. A big one in terms of keeping control of the NFC West. And again, not the shortest of weeks, but Arizona playing on Monday night, a team that came into that game already a little banged up, specifically on defense. I like Seattle in that matchup. If you're one for storylines and some drama and maybe like a grudge match, this one is interesting for you. The 4:25 Eastern kickoff. San Fran going to New England. Jimmy G comes back into Foxborough. And Kyle Shanahan, who had the game of his life play calling perspective against Bill Belichick until he refused to run the ball in the fourth quarter and blew a lead against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But Tom Brady no longer at quarterback. Cam Newton is the starter in New England, and he looked inaccurate with only 2 practices in 20 days. Who are you leaning with in a game where the line opened at 5.5, and again, things change quickly after a Monday nighter? It's now 2.5.
Yeah, that's interesting about the double revenge game for the 49ers. I had thought about Jimmy Garoppolo, but I hadn't thought about Shanahan getting a chance to come back after that Super Bowl loss. But maybe one of the craziest things I heard on Sunday after the Patriots lost to the Broncos was that this is the first time they've been under 500 since week 8 of the 2002 season. It's a mind-blowing thing to think about. That's 18 years ago. That was also the last time the Patriots lost more than 2 games in a row. And so as good as the Niners looked on Sunday night, I'm not comfortable betting that Bill Belichick will lose 3 games in a row, especially as small favorites at home. And you mentioned the fact that they've barely practiced, and I think that's played a huge factor in them losing the last 2 games. And so this week, hopefully, they get back to a normal practice schedule. And given all of that and the way that Bill Belichick coaches his teams, I expect they'll bounce back and win this game.
Yeah, the impact that COVID has had on buildings being open and closed and everything being virtual for some and teams practicing and not practicing has really, it's not only wreaked havoc on the actual league and the preparation, it's really wreaked havoc on how you evaluate these lines and who's going to be ready to play. I thought for certain that the Tennessee Titans against the Bills were going to look like a mess because they haven't been in their facility. There was going to be a real impact. And it was the exact opposite. And maybe I should have realized that the Titans were actually practicing at high school and they were fine. But then because I was so wrong in that case, I thought to myself, well, Bill Belichick doesn't need actual practice time for his team. The virtual meetings will be fine. And the Patriots will be great against Denver. And nope, that wasn't the case. And many people lost in their survivor pools because of it. So I'm not really sure how I feel, having said all that, about the Patriots coming into this game. This is one thing that I do know. Everyone's kind of back on the bandwagon in San Fran, and Jimmy G's looks right again, and their offense looked better, and I suppose that's true, but he was 19 of 25 on passes fewer than 10 yards. They're throwing a lot of screens. Deebo Samuel had 6 alone. He was only 4 of 8 on passes 10 yards or more. A pass beyond the sticks, he was 50-50. You can't basically play in a phone booth and have offensive success against Bill Belichick. If you are one-dimensional, he will key on that. And that's why I think with this line coming down a full 3 points to a key number like 2.5, New England can win this by a field goal, no question. So I'm confident with the Pats in that matchup for sure. I should be more confident about this next one, but I'm not. The Kansas City Chiefs are favored against the Denver Broncos, even though they're on the road. No kidding. That's to be expected. But they are by 9 points. Now, normally, Kansas City's offense is so explosive, but evidently, like, Andy Reid now wants to run the wishbone, and it's the grounded pound Chiefs. The old Chiefs would have blown out the Bills early, and they kind of kept them around in a game that never really felt close, but still was kind of close. What do you think the number of 9 is against a Broncos team that, granted the Patriots didn't look good, they kind of looked pretty good against New England this past week?
Yeah, I think the number is a big factor for sure. I don't love picking a road favorite by that much. It's an uncomfortable number. But then also, the Broncos are really good at what the Raiders did to Patrick Mahomes 2 weeks ago, and that was pressure him. The Broncos are probably the best team at pressuring the quarterback. Maybe the Steelers are better, but over the last 2 games, the Denver's had 10 sacks and 27 QB hits. And so if I think there's a way to throw Patrick Mahomes off his game, that's it. And so given that and what we saw from the Broncos over the weekend against the Patriots, and this is a division game, I'm going to take the Broncos. I'm just a little uncomfortable with the number, and I think the Broncos defense can do enough. I think the Chiefs win, but I think it ultimately ends up being closer than 9.
Yeah, see, the difference for me is, the Raiders dropped a lot of people and were able to get pressure by rushing, with four. And the Broncos certainly bring a little bit more pressure with Vic Fangio, and Mahomes loves to go against the blitz just because it makes his reads that much easier. And the it is a big number on the road. You're 100% correct, but Patrick Mahomes doesn't really scare me in terms of going on the road and performing. 10-1 in his last 11 starts on the road, 23 TDs, 2 INTs. He's one of those competitors that likes to shut up the opposing crowd. Now, in many stadiums, there are no crowds, but I do think the Chiefs can cover the 9, and I think they get a jolt from Le'Veon, being in the fold, and I think they go and have a big win. Are we a little too early on our Herbert love with the Chargers that we expect them to get a big win in terms of them being favored by 7.5 points over the Jacksonville Jaguars? I've been considering the Chargers in Survivor, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, it's like October. It's a little too early to pick the Chargers in Survivor. I won't reveal where I'm going in terms of that yet, but where are you with this line at 7.5?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because the Chargers are known for losing one-score games. They're known for being in and then losing one-score games. So to think of them being favored by 2 scores is kind of a tough one to comprehend. But the Jags, they've lost 5 straight, and 3 of them have been by at least 16 points. So if I was going to pick one thing or bet on one thing in this game, a one-score game or a Chargers blowout, I'm leaning Chargers blowout just because, you mentioned Justin Herbert. He's playing really well. What he did to the Saints was really impressive. And the Jaguars kind of are who we thought they were going to be now. They're not very good. They turn the ball over, and the defense is below average. So I think the Chargers get this win. I think they win big, and Justin Herbert gets his first NFL win.
Yeah, I feel like this is the Chargers win big, and then on the following Monday, we come back on here next Tuesday talking about the fact that the Jaguars potentially have a new coach, that's why I do think 7.5. Oh man, the Chargers just love to historically break your heart as soon as you buy in, but maybe this is a different Chargers with Phillip Rivers gone and Herbert in, and they have been good against the spread this year, 4-1 against it. So I'll go Chargers in this one, and I'll reveal it right now. Yes, I'm going to go Chargers as my Survivor pick. I might look back and think this is idiotic, but I got to probably pick them at some point. So why not get it over with against a terrible Jags team when they're coming off a bye and they're at home? Tampa Bay, came off a game where they looked like they were practicing against the Packers. They were so dominant. And the last time we saw the Las Vegas Raiders, they were looking very good against a good offense, and the Chiefs as well. Tampa Bay on the road -3. Who do you like in the Sunday nighter?
It's interesting because I think the Raiders have definitely found something with not only Henry Ruggs. I think he's a superstar, but the fact that he brings that deep element to the offense, something that when he's off the field, they don't have even a sniff of. So I think that will end up giving Vegas the chance to give a lot of teams trouble. That being said, the Buccaneers defense is good on every level. Not only is the secondary sneaky good, I mean, some, no-name guys, I think these guys are coming up in the secondary. The linebackers are great. And the defensive line is basically unstoppable. And I think that's going to be enough to neutralize Derek Carr. I don't think they're there quite yet where they can compete with a defense that's this tough. And so because of that defense, not even mentioning Tom Brady and that offense, I think the Buccaneers are able to get it done on the road and cover 3.
I think so as well. You talk about that defense and how good they are. Lead the league in run defense, lead the league in opposing, total QBR. 38 unanswered against the Packers, and obviously that's because Tom Brady looks really good, but to go that long unanswered, you have to be playing good defense. And maybe Gronk is back. He had his first TD in like 679 days. He looked like a mummy, playing for the first couple of weeks, and now he's got a little bit, maybe his second leg. So I think Tampa Bay again, is kind of separating themselves and putting themselves in the class with the real championship contenders. And I think they do that in the Sunday nighter. The Monday nighter, I don't think either of these teams are championship contenders, but they have had a good start. Chicago Bears, who are 5-1. Yes, they're threatening to win the NFC after a month and a half, going to the Rams, who are favored by 7 points at home. That's a lot of points, considering how impressive the Bears have been. Too many for you?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one. Despite a really poor showing, they were one of the contributors to this weekend's awful football that I was talking about. I think the Rams are a playoff team, and I think they have the potential to be a sleeper in the NFC. They're pretty good on both sides of the ball. That said, I'm done picking against the Bears. I've picked against them every week this season. They've burned me almost every time. They're 4-2 against the spread, and they've only played in one game that was decided by more than 7 points. So if that's going to be the spread in this game, the defense in Chicago is legit. The offense is what it is. But I think they're going to be able to keep it closer than maybe it should be in LA on Monday night.
Yeah, so this line opened at 7. It's now at 5.5.
Yeah, that doesn't really change my pick, I think. The point stands.
Yeah, I'm not there with the Bears yet. And maybe I come back on next week and I say I've learned my lesson. I'm finally on board with the Bears. But every year there's a team that gets up the gate super hot and then they lose 4, 5, or 6 straight. And then we look back and say, remember when we kind of thought they were a contender and they're really not? And I feel like this year that team is going to be the Bears. The Foles may change that equation. We'll see. And certainly that the defense is good enough to win games by itself. The run game has looked a bit better this year than it had a season ago. But I still think, by and large, the Rams are just a better team. Like if we just looked at the two deeps of both teams, there's much more talent with Los Angeles. And so I think there's a bounce back win for them and they can cover the 5.5, no problem. All right. I've already ruined any intrigue or surprise and I gave away my survivor, and it's the Los Angeles Chargers. Who are you going with in Survivor this week?
That's funny because I also have the Chargers. But yeah, it's a risky one considering the Jags were the team that forced me to buy back in after I took them against the Colts week 1. But some other options that I thought about picking, considering we're both doing the same thing. I thought about the Bills and the Jets. The Jets are the team to ride. So if you wanted to use the Bills, this is a good time. Another risky one that I thought about, and you might disagree because of the way we picked, was the Eagles on Thursday night. And there aren't going to be many opportunities to use these NFC East teams in Survivor because they're so bad. But I think this is a good opportunity if you want to take a risk and get one of those out of the way. Go think about Eagles, Giants, but really go Chargers or Bills. I mean, Bills is a no-brainer.
Congratulations to you if you're still in your Survivor pool because we had a lot of people that were knocked out last week. And so hopefully you listen to us, and that's not the case for you this week. Thank you for watching us. Continue to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next week. Enjoy watching the game.